Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Hiroshi Watanabe. So good to have you with us here at the Fund Global Institute. Let me first ask you about the Bank of Japan and the monetary policy. The announcement that it's going to renew its stimulus package, essentially, in a bid to inject more money into Japan's domestic economy. How does that affect your operations?
Monetary policy itself is not sufficient to boost up the economy to that. But I think the last the few years, so the monetary policy is rather the low key on that. So I think the people's sentiment is somewhat dampened. So I think yesterday's his message and the team's message is very much good to encourage the people to work on the new horizon to that. So in that sense, I think very much important to that. But anyway, the monetary policy, we have to check periodically to that. So especially maybe 6 months later in the fall, we have to check what's the real outcome of the operation to that. So I think that is important to that. Now that Japan is going to make the division of labor, each company is going to find what would remain in domestic market, what would be produced in the outside. So such kind of the classification has been taking the last few years to that. But now they are going to see some of the new dimension to think about to that. So at least the last few years, we have suffering from the very high value of the yen. So in that case, there will be some kind of the biases to go out to that. But now they are going to think about even they can stay in the domestic market, and also they can create some new idea in the coming on to that. But of course, already in the Asia, maybe assembly type of the manufacturing is dominated by the Korea and Southeastern Asia to that. So in the case of Japan, maybe we can focus on some specific sector of like the materials, including the carbon fiber, and also we are going to make every effort to have the producing machine. That could be the cases. But I think these two areas doesn't take any big size of the employment on that. But in order to give some job opportunity to the people, maybe the service sector should be encouraged that. So in that case, I think the deregulation on the service sector is also important to that. So recently, the government has said we have some policy of the 3 arrows: first arrow, second arrow, and third arrow. The first arrow is monetary policy. So exactly yesterday, the BOJ has made new the horizon to that. And also currently the diet, our Congress is discussing on the New Year's budget a little bit, maybe 1.5 months later than the previous days on that. But I think it could be the cases for the second arrow of the fiscal policy to that. But the third arrow is not just one shot of the arrow. So there is some kind of bundle of the many arrows. So deregulation and also the change of the employment law and also some corporation law and any other type of the operation. So such kind of the change is also expected. In that case, if we have the very good shot of the 3 arrows, in that case, we can have some new horizon in the coming days on that.
Let's talk now about JBIC and energy security. Let's first turn to the domestic situation in Japan. Of course, after Fukushima, the country has had to do a lot of soul searching in terms of its energy policy. How would you say that JBIC has changed in response to that, both domestically, and then I'll ask you also about internationally?
Yeah. Already last half decade, we have made every effort to make the acquisition of the upstream interest of the mining and also energy. But since the disaster in the March 11th, we have some more effort to import the energy to generate the electricity. That is a new burden for us to that. So now we can have some kind of the two-front operation. So still we are encouraging the Japanese companies to acquire the upstream interest in other countries to that. But also, we are going to make some more the stable supply of the gas or the petrol in the market. That is quite important. And also now many countries are going to have more demand. So in that case, I think just asking to see in the market is not sufficient. Maybe each the user should have some kind of upstream interest, maybe the 15% of the total share of the mining. Then such kind of sponsor can make the more wider the receipt of the supply. So even the 15% of the share, but they can import the 30% of the total supply. So such kind of the operation is very much important to us. So in that sense, we have the combining operation on the energy supply issues on that. So.
Is this helping Japan's energy supply? Because obviously Japan is very, very heavily reliant on outside energy.
Yeah. In case of Japan, in the case of the gas and the petrol, the 99 or 98% is depending upon the foreign suppliers. And in order to overcome such kind of situation, we have made some of the enhancement of the nuclear power generation. But since the Fukushima issues, we are a little bit cautious to make such kind of operation. So now the government is going to set a new standard of what would be taken to be remaining and what could be abolished. Such kind of decision can be taken within a very short time to that. But still we have to make the more the need to the encouraging the economies to work. So in that case, the stable supply of electricity is quite important. So in that case, I think that especially these days, petrol is no more used for the power generation, but I think the LNG and also maybe coal is another possibility in the coming days. And some of the renewable, like geothermal and wind, that could be mobilized in Japan to that. So that is very much new trend for that sense.
And is that also framing your energy policy abroad in terms of what you fund, infrastructure projects you look at, renewable energy projects you look at? Is that also reshaping what you're doing abroad?
Yeah. So anyway, the last few years we have emphasized operation on the energy side on that, especially for the clean energy is quite important to that. So we have set up the name of the initiative is very much the popular name of the Green Initiative to that. So that is the first target is that we are going to encouraging the developing economies to have the better power generation or any other type of the efficient use of the energy. That could have been helped by our operation to that. So throughout Asia, even for Latin America, so recently even in the Eastern Europe, we are making some financing to support such kind of operation to that. That is one thing to that. And if the Japanese companies has kind of such kind of operation on the outside, in that case, they can keep some level of the technology, even in Japan to that. So they can have another new, the development of the exploring the new technology in Japan to that. So that could be kind of the good cycle to go on to that. So that is our target on that. So far we are doing very well to that. And at the time of the beginning of the century, around 2001 and 2002, at the time our operation is almost like 1 trillion yen per year to that. So, and the conversion to the currency is somewhat difficult. So I was talking the yen term to that. But the last year, we have made nearly the 4 trillion yen operation. So that is very much an expanded operation to that. And the main target is, of course, even we can make some kind of operation in the developed economy, North America, in Europe, and Australia to that. But I think still the majority of the operation is in the developing economies. And I say the more than half is in Asia. That is the current situation.
Let's talk now about, you mentioned Asia. Much of what JBIC does is in Asia. Many countries in Asia, India, China, Indonesia, for example, have expanding urban populations in contrast to Japan. How are you responding to that expansion? Are you very much a supporter of Asia's rising growth, both in terms of population, energy requirements, and infrastructure requirements?
Yeah, I think the last half decade and also in the coming few years, so the Asia should be the position of the core of the growth in the world to that. So I think how to encourage the Asian economy is quite important, not only for the Asia and Japan, but also in the global economy to that. So I think that could be a very much important task to that. But very unfortunately, since the Lehman shock in the United States and the Greek incident in Europe, I think the supply of the long-term financing is very much shrunk. So I think now the JBIC is going to provide some of the long-term financing over there to that. In the year of the 2005 and 2006, at the time in the Asian project, nearly the 15% or the 20% is taken care of by the European continental banks to that. But now they totally vanishes to that. So how to fill such kind of gap to continue the project is quite important. And also, as I said, the JBIC operation itself is really expanded, but also now we are going to some effort to bring in that new institution, new financial institution to join to the syndicate. So in Japan, we are going to ask the rather small local banks to join the syndicate. And also even in Asia, we are going to provide some guarantee for the new entry to the financial institutions joining to the syndicate. So that could have some effort to the expansion of the total supply of the funds to that. In Asia, I think most of the banking institution has rather sound basis of capital. So the BIS ratio, they have more than 13 or 14% on that. So they have very much the good basis to keep on the operation. But they are not accustomed to the international operation. They are accustomed to the international operation, bringing the money from the outside to use in the domestic market. But now we are going to have the active operation of the Asian banks to lend the neighbors. That is quite important. So in that case, they are somewhat cautious to go into such kind of syndicate. So in that case, if the JBIC or maybe the Asian Development Bank can have some kind of the assurance or the guarantee. So in that case, they rather easily go into the business. Then we can keep some level of the financing. That was very much important to that. And also recently, not only for the formation of the syndicate of the loan, but also we are going to provide the guarantee for the issue of the bond by the sovereign country. And also some of the government agencies do that. So they are going to issue the bond in the Tokyo market. So in that case, they can take the guarantee for the JBIC. So that means they are reduce the premium. And also even the Japanese, Asian investors is going to have some good new supply of the instrument on that. Such a kind of the operation is also very much important in the coming days. And that's
So to help the financing gap then caused by what went on in the US and in the Eurozone, you're trying to encourage many more local stakeholders to fund this financing gap. Are you also encouraging the private sector, for example, to get more involved in Asia?
Yeah, I think the private sector is quite important. So in old days, the money supply to the developing economy is very high share is coming from the public money, so-called the ODA or the concessional type of the lending to that. But now each country in the developed economies has faced some kind of the fiscal constraint. Austerity means not only for the services to the nationals, but also they are going to shrink the supply of the money into the developing economies. Yesterday there was some announcement. The last year the ODA has been shrunk by the 4% in comparison with the previous year to that. So in that case, I think more of the money should be coming from the private sector. And also, as you see, that the total size of the operation, the public money is very much small portion, and the private money has a very big amount of the supply to that. So they have to channel these private money into the development needs to that. But most of the time, the private money is in the form of the short term to that. But in order to have the project and the enhancement of the infrastructure and also the environmental project, we need to have the long-term financing. So some kind of the formation from the short to the long term, that is quite important. So in that case, I think the public institution like ours in the bilateral and also multilateral of the World Bank and the ADB and some regional bank in each area can have some kind of the support to invite the private money into such kind of syndication of the financing. I think that could be done in the coming days on that. So in that case, we can make some kind of the stable and the supply of the money to that. Of course, the economy itself is not so good in the since the Greek incident and the Lehman shock on that. But in the case of infrastructure, if we totally stop such kind of operation, so next generation is going to be very much suffering from such kind of lack of the infrastructure. So in that case, in the area of the infrastructure financing, we should keep the minimum plus alpha. That is quite important. So such kind of plus alpha can be brought in the private sector and with some assurance of the public sectors. That is very much important to the maybe division of labor in the market.
So let's talk more specifically about some of Asia's emerging markets. India still poses, a huge growth market for finance, for infrastructure, for renewable energies, for sustainable development. How are you working with India in financial remodeling, for example? Yeah.
I think in the case of the Japanese companies, they're working very hard in the China and the Southeastern Asia in the last the 2 or 3 decades on that. But now they're going to seek the new horizon in India. And especially since 2007, 8, 9, 10, India has shown the very good performance of the economy to that. And also at the time, still the Japanese companies made some claim. If you compare with China, maybe the infrastructure, the base is somewhat smaller than the China to that. So it could have some kind of the hindering of such kind of operation to that. And originally the Indian government says, so we have some good basis of the infrastructure, so such kind of claim we cannot accept it. But I think the new government, the Mr. Manmohan Singh and also the Mr. Alwaria said, we admitted such kind of shortage of the infrastructure. So now we are going to ask a Japanese company or Korean companies to come into India to have the infrastructure. So in that case, the infrastructure would be prepared. Then the new operation of the manufacturing is coming to that. Such kind of the change has been taken since the 2007 or 8. So that is very much important to change on that. And now the Japanese companies has shown the more good interest in India to that. But the last 2 years, the Indian pace of the growth is somewhat weaker. And also there is some kind of the corruption and also some inefficiency of the government. And also now they are going to have the election in the coming days on that. So now not only for the Japanese companies, but some other foreign investors become a little bit cautious to that. But in the long run, anyway, China and India, they have a huge amount of the population to that. They can remain as a good consumption market. So that is the idea to that. In the case of China, originally the Japanese company, even the Korean companies sees that China would be the production basis for the export to the North America and to Europe to that. But now they are going to change the position of the China. China should be the final consumption market. So they are going to keep some kind of the presence in the China. But then they are going to produce in the Southeastern Asia and bring into the China to be sold. So such kind of new pattern of the trade has been already observed to that. So in that case, the China and India should remain as a very good basis for the market. Anyway, even coming days on that, these two countries joined had 1/3 of the total population of the world. That definitely we cannot neglect that. And also we have to make some support for there is no real concession or the recession in these countries to that. So I think China, India is very much important in the coming days. Even in China this year and the next year, they are going to have some kind of slowing down the economy to that. But in order to maintain the China, India, combining the 2.6 billion people, that is quite important for the maybe mission, not only for Japan, but the total world economy to that. So.
Mr. Hiroshi Watanabe, thank you very much for your time and your insight, and thanks for talking to the Fulham Global Institute.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.